And why don't you just go pay $1?
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Instead of affordable.
They had a bunch of parts that were outside, so those no charge.
Candy bars.
I was glad you did that.
Do you have dogs?
No, our dog died about a year ago. They had to find it.
Hi, all.
Who's a frightened kitty?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Hi. Looks like we got a crowd. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Well, I am in lovely Helena.
In a lovely motel room, it looks like.
in a lovely hotel room. So I've been now that I'm officially untethered, Teresa knows what it's like. I've been following my wife around to conferences and they've been really good. So last night I asked her, so when's our next conference?
Our next conference.
All right, I assume we're live, so I guess enough of the fun stuff. All right. So let's see. Ethan, do we have a quorum?
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
All right, I need to ask for an opening prayer. Do I have a volunteer, please? Teresa, go for it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Let's bow our heads and take a moment and appreciate this lovely day. Appreciate the many blessings the good Lord has bestowed on us. And that we pay special attention to the promise of Holy Week and the promise of Easter. We want to make sure to mention that our hearts are open and we are praying for those in our community that have lost loved ones recently, that might be homeless, might be needing a meal, and we hope that someone reaches out to them and embraces them, offers assistance and offers love and support. Amen.
Oh, Lemlemch. Okay, so for you all to know, I can hear you, but I didn't realize, having not done these Zoom meetings very often with the board, that it's very echoey. So if I repeat a question or if I need to hear something, to please excuse me. So I'll just stay on top of that. Hopefully you can all hear me. Attendance, please. So Ethan or whoever you have do attendance.
Let's see if I don't normally do it, but I'll do my best here, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Matt.
Here.
Georgia Smeeze.
Here.
Shane Hendrickson. Here. Roger Noble. Here. Teresa Wall McDonald.
Here.
And I am aware that Vice Chair Pitt is absent from today's meeting.
Correct. All right. Thank you. So for the agenda today, I just wanted to chat real quick before we do a final approval. This is a work session. We've got a number of items. First of all, on the agenda, we're scheduled to go from 1 to 5. I don't know if you want to change that or just assume that if you at some point decide after a couple hours or 3 hours, you want to, we've done enough that we can do that. I think if you are okay with that, I think we can be flexible, and I don't know that we're required to go to 5, but I think we're prepared to if we need to. Just wanted to touch base with everybody and see where you're at with it.
I'm prepared to stay as long as we need.
I do have an obligation, right after 5 o'clock, but I'm available from 1 to 5.
Yeah, I'm good to go to 5. I prefer not to go later than 5. There are other meetings in the Jocko Valley I wouldn't mind attending this evening.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it at 1 to 5. My preference is to go less than 5, but if we can do that. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to also want to assume that we will make our priority the bylaws, given the amount of time we have? If we can get to anything else, may I suggest that we might want to change the order of 3.2 and 3.3. But if you're all good with being flexible, we'll see how far we get with the board bylaws, and then take it from there. So it looks like a lot, and we've got a lot to get through with the bylaws itself. So anyone else have anything on the agenda you'd like to discuss?
Are there packets available? I do not have a packet, and at the moment, I do not have a working printer at home.
Well, let's take just a moment, Ethan, and make sure Teresa has the full packet, please.
Jane also.
Oh,
Oh, you've got it. Okay.
yeah, they had one for me.
Well, you spelled it. Special though.
How'd you make it in the door?
The superintendent is pretty special.
I just think this is what happens if we get even a little bit of sun. Look what happens.
I know.
I was like, darn, the door doesn't work, so I have to stay out here.
We can't handle the sun.
Well, I printed some stuff out, and I managed to misplace it.
I know you have a stock.
I had a stack of papers.
Oh, here, I was witness to that.
My apologies.
We get silly.
Apologies. I started over here to give you some documents. I think I got distracted. So, I think these are gonna be the only things that you're gonna need today.
Let's get in business.
I'm in business, that's what I want.
Let me give you an example.
Hey, that's.
All right. Thank you for that extra little bit of time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Teresa, are we good?
Good to go.
Okay, so if there are no other comments on the agenda, if there are, please speak up. Otherwise, I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as provided.
Motion to adopt the agenda. Second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. We have an agenda. We are on item 2, public comment for items not on the agenda. I don't know how many public members we have, but is there anyone from the public physically in the audience?
Mr. Chairman, Philip Waite with the Montana DNRC is in the audience.
Does Pela have any comments?
And we have two participants online, and I don't see any hands up. If you want to make a comment and you are online, please do click the raise your hand button, and I can allow you to speak. Mr. Chairman, I see no hands raised online.
All right, very good. We'll close that section of the agenda, move on to the working session of board bylaws. So we've got a lot to cover there. So does everyone have, I assume everyone has a copy of the draft bylaws. The draft I have says original draft of April 13, 2023. Is there anyone who does not have that? Are we set?
Mr. Chairman, hopefully you can now see my computer screen on your screen. You don't mind checking to see if that's working?
I have that. That would be good for public consumption there. Then at that point, I'm hoping all the board members have a hard copy. Is that correct?
Correct. Mr. Chairman, there are hands nodding yes here. So I believe everybody is set with the hard copy. And
all right, I'm gonna suggest that we kind of move through now. Ahead of time, I've looked at, and there are a couple items highlighted on the table of contents, but those items are also highlighted within the body. So unless somebody has a comment on the table of contents, I would suggest we go to page 4.
I guess I have oh, I see what's going on. Okay, I'm good. I'm good.
We're good. All right. Can we go to page 4? And so unless you have a preference for how we do this, what I propose is we just take this page by page and especially focusing on those pages that have highlighted items. So page 4 would be the first page. So in the red, continue to use articles or switch to something distinct as bylaw 1, bylaw 2, etc. Comments there, my first comment is we should stick to articles, but we should be able to reference them as either bylaws articles or compact articles, but that's my thought, so open for comment.
I think we're all good with that.
Okay. The blue section is a good example of that. Compact article 4I1 is listed here. And then at the bottom of that, it says the board's executive arm is the office of the engineer. OE staff is led by the water engineer. So all of that in blue. Any thoughts, questions, or concerns with that? Are we good to keep it? I take it we're good to keep it. So I am moving on to page 5, section 2.3. There is some language in red there.
I'm on that. No, sorry, Clayton, but on that, I guess I'm good with that paragraph, but then the next sentence down, the board's executive arm is the office of the engineer. Is that out of that compact too, or is that?
Mr. Chairman, Roger, that is not, that's why it is set out to the left.
That's kind of what I thought.
And so the inset, here is intended to show that that is a more of a compact citation, whereas the, moving back over here. And, this was a rephrase of, language that the board had, asked for previously. But, we can change that.
I guess my comment on that was, I don't think executive arm is appropriate. I think the office of the engineer is more of an administrative type entity. So I would
Okay.
just revise that to something.
Is there so let me ask a quick question, Ethan. So for the purposes of the bylaws, do we have a definition section?
Mr. Chairman, board members, the section 2.1 is the section with acronyms and terms.
So if we just put the Office of Engineer definition in there, is that adequate? And maybe we don't need that sentence.
Mr. Chairman, your legal counsel, Haley Franson, has got her hand raised.
Yes. Haley.
Hi all. It's been a while. Hope you're doing okay.
Good. Thank you.
I would tend to agree with board member Noble's comment on making it an administrative arm. In the compact, it is referred to as an administrative function. Specifically under the powers and duties of the board.
Okay, other board, thank you, Haley. Other board comments? And with that change, do you want to keep that or do something else?
I'm good with that change.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, holler if you have something on that. So we'll go, if it's all right, we can go to section 2.3. Well, there's highlighted in red, some language. Are we good with that?
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good with that. Moving on, I have 2.4, and I see a piece highlighted in yellow, and I think I have comment on that, and that my comments extend down to section 2.5, and so I'll say this, a couple things. I pose this as a question. I'm not sure how appropriate it is to have it listed as the Office of Engineer as owning any property. That I was not clear on why we would do that, but maybe there's a reason.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
Your legal counsel did give me a few track changes that I have put into the document right before our meeting. And she would agree with you and had instructed me to suggest removing "and the Office of the Engineer." And if you can look at the Zoom screen, you'll see that that is stricken, at least in that one sentence, which may not address what you've got in below or everywhere else.
That would be my same question and point for 2.5 and 2.6, but so with Haley on, I guess if that was your thought for 2.4, your thoughts on 5 and 6?
Yeah, I would agree with, you. The Office of the Engineer is not a legal entity. And so it cannot own any sort of property, only the board can.
Okay, very good. So if we can make those changes, Ethan, that would be great. And then at the end of 2.6.
But if you put FRWMB there, you can. Yeah.
Like that? Okay, excellent.
Thanks, Haley. Any other board members have any comments on that section?
As a process question, is this real-time editing without track changes working for board members, or would you? Yep, okay, just let me know if I'm changing things too fast, or if you want them highlighted for removal or something different. Thank you.
I guess it's good for me for now. I would say that once we're all done, then we'll probably want to see a hard copy of a final draft, but as long as it's working for everybody for now, let's continue. Thank you. All right, with that, my next observations are on page 6 at the bottom. If somebody has something before then, please speak up. Otherwise, that's where I'm going. So I'd be looking at all of the blue section that extends from page 6 onto the top of page 7. So I have, in general, understand the concept of board expectations, but Ethan, do you know where these came from, and our other board members, have you had thoughts on these? I got a couple comments.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, board members, Georgia board member Sneeze asked for a section that brought forward board expectations. I then threw some spaghetti at the bylaws, and we had a little bit of discussion. They seemed like they were generally appreciated. There's some highlighted parts that were talked about at another work session, and they are still highlighted because I did not feel that the board resolved those issues in their entirety. So I wanted to bring them to your attention again, and I kept this blue till everybody basically hit the print button for accepting this section 3.4.
All right, board members.
I'm generally okay with every bit of it.
Yeah, I think the 80% used to say 90%.
It did used to say 90%, good recollection.
And I think the or when possible might be new.
Yep, that was, those were things that came out of board members' mouths that I put into the document as best I could.
I do like the loosening of that, and speaking from a selfish reason here, that I can see a time when this meeting will be hard for the superintendent to be here, particularly during fire season. And you only need to miss 2 meetings to, I think, trip 80%. And I can see that between personal reasons and professional reasons that I could miss more than that. So I do like the softening of that. And I do like the overall intent that these are our general expectations. You are expected to be here, present, functioning, knowledgeable of the ordinances and the processes. I get, and it's just, again, selfish reasons, I get nervous about when I see hard time frame down there, and it's not that I don't want to be here. But there may be job requirements that I can't be here. And again, that's entirely selfish on my part.
And so, we could, this was intended to be written so that maybe that was an option. Or we could leave it in there and I'm whatever.
So I was initially not overly enthralled with that, but I come around to think that that's a good idea. I like that language. But I think Shane makes a good point that maybe you could say 80% of board meetings, except when a valid absence occurs or something, you know?
Or what if I just, board members are expected to attend and participate? Period.
Can I suggest, I had a couple thoughts. I was kind of going, I mean, I get where you're headed there, and I think I can add that, but I was looking at board members are expected to attend regular meetings. Period. That's my thinking. And I would say unless otherwise excused, which simply would mean that a board member would want to let everyone know that they can't attend. Where we might want to address the absenteeism is in a section we'll talk about later, which has to do with potential removal of a board member, which, you know, if somebody is constantly not able to attend and we're not able to address that with them, that would be the place to deal with that. Otherwise, those are my thoughts. We don't have to change it to that. If you want to keep 80%, if majority of you want to keep it at 80%, and I would say the other language would be unless otherwise excused, would be a good approach. But those are my thoughts.
I like this better.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Mhm.
Does anyone have a thought or comment on the bullet that says board members are expected to complete assignments? I get I understand the language, but does anyone have any thoughts there? I'm a little hazy on that one.
I think George is gonna give you an F if you don't.
It's teacher language. No, I think if I recall our last discussion, we were looking at who was the audience of the bylaws. And if the bylaws are to be a training document for new board members, then it's helpful to know what the expectations are. And so we may or may not want to keep that language, right? But we were just brainstorming some ideas, and one was that you should come to a meeting prepared. So how does the group feel after having more time to think about it? Do you think that's unnecessary?
No, I'm not saying it is or isn't. I just wanted to make sure that if everyone, that particular one for me is, if everyone else is good with it, I'm good. But I wanted to make sure we at least had a little dialogue on that so we understood it.
And for me, I don't mind that it's in there. It seems almost repetitive to me from the sentence right above there. But I don't have strong either way opinion on it.
I think there's a difference though, you know, because that would be to me like committee assignments or subcommittee assignments, not just preparing for the meetings.
Okay, I'm fine with it. Let's keep. I mean, if you're all okay with, let's just keep that in. The next one I was looking at was the bullet that has the highlighted section comply in it. That entire bullet, I have some I would like to hear your thoughts on that one as well.
Seems like we had a brief discussion about this at some point, that it really is hitting to your point. It's more of an awareness thing for board members that these are public meetings and understand that they are public meetings. And we had discussions on whether you need to really comply, because that's just part of our process. And I think that's why the word comply is highlighted. Because it's like, we're doing that, we will comply. And we are compliant. So I remember that's why we got hung up in the word comply, because it's inherent in the process.
Would we say board members will comply with public participation in open meeting? I thought about that because I thought, well, how can I not comply with it when I come? How can I not? Right.
Yeah, I think what's happening is that we're looking at that and reading, understand the language, but to comply with the open meeting laws and public participation is a board responsibility, not a board member responsibility. So it's a board member responsibility as you participate in regular board meetings. So no individual board member, that's not an individual board member responsibility other than your participation in a board meeting. So that was my only thought, is it's really a board responsibility. But I understand the words. I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page with that one.
Yeah, and so to me, the board members will be compliant with the public participation.
Or you could just eliminate it. If
Right.
it's a responsibility of the board in total, we don't need a separate sentence for the members, do we?
You know, though, I come back to what, I think maybe it was you. Said these bylaws are really for, we're all in tune with it now, but for the next members. So that when the new members come onto the board, they read this and they know what their responsibilities are. So for that reason, I kind of like leaving it in.
Okay.
Can I add maybe a little bit of clarification then?
Sure.
Something to the effect, board members are, let me see here.
What if we just said the board?
Yeah, board members are expected to comply with the public participation and open meeting law requirements of the board.
One more time, please.
Board members are expected to comply with the public participation and open meeting requirements of the board. In my mind, it's a little different, but
Yeah, get rid of the rest. Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So how's that?
I guess to simplify it further, you could just replace board members with the board is expected to comply.
Well, I think that language is elsewhere in the bylaws, isn't it? And there's an open meeting law requirement. I mean, I don't remember. It seems like there is, but
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But the board expectations, though, from the first sentence to the one we have now, the one now very much watered down, I think, because it was an expectation, not just with open meeting, but a general support for everything found in the compact, the ordinance, the bylaws, and resolutions. So it was kind of, the way I read it initially, it was like we have an obligation to support the infrastructure and policies that we operate under, so you can't go rogue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, with the clarification I made, beyond that, if you want to keep it where I'm good with it, I just wanted to make sure we had that conversation.
I'm, if we leave it, I like the broader obligation, otherwise we can delete it. But it was expectations of the board, so it seems like, it's not just open meeting, it's a whole ball of wax.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I'm not sure if this makes sense or not, but would you like to have the word member?
Yeah.
Here, because I noticed there is a incongruency between the bulleting language and this is more specific as to Roger's comment that this is written sort of intentionally for a new member.
Yes.
It's a good catch.
Yes.
Sure. All right,
If I got everything,
I think we've got enough to work with it, so I think we're good. We can always come back and revisit that. So continuing on page 7, there's some red down there. That I had 2 suggestions. One is, and maybe one's a comment where it says in Article 4I2C, is that compact article? Because I couldn't find 2IRC in the bylaws, so we want to clarify where that's coming from. And then I was going to suggest that we discuss the question in the red.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I'm going to have a hard time tracking references while I'm also editing. So forgive me for.
We can just highlight that as you have and just follow up, and let's make sure we know where that, where it's coming from. It just says article, but we should clarify it's a compact article.
I'll make sure that gets handled.
So the question in red. So any thoughts? My question on top of that is, how could we create an acting designation? We almost have to just go through the process of just appointing someone, but I don't know where we draw from.
So I'll just throw some stuff out and you guys can tell me your good thoughts. I mentioned this at work and was trying to get some ideas because the 5th position is appointed by the other members of the board. And one of the suggestions was that if something like that were to occur, could a temporary designee be like the hydrology professor at SKC or a hydrology instructor, just to get some ideas going here? Would that Would somebody with that background be a temporary person that could be selected? Are there other ideas? You know, what would you need in that fifth position that? If something came up, there would be someone you could tap for a designee.
Or do you go back into the original vacancy file? Do you go back into the original advertisement as a way to see if, you know, the original entrance? That's a possibility also.
Yeah. Or does it have to have a designee? Did we discuss that? Does it have to have a designee?
We still have a quorum, right? We still have a quorum, so I thought if we are efficient in advertising and soliciting, it might happen quickly.
When it seems like, or I think Mr. Chairman was going, it may be as time consuming to pick a designee than it would just to pick the new person.
Yeah.
So maybe we just, you know, it just says we will go through the process to vet a new member.
Well, I just looked up article 4I2C, and there is a very explicit process to follow when you can't decide.
When
Yeah.
you campus.
Yeah, it actually goes back to, then the tribal council nominates 2 new members, and the governor nominates 2 new possibilities, and then they go through the process again. So I don't, I kind of agreed with Clayton's initial statement that there really isn't, there can't be a designation for a fifth member because of the process that's in the compact.
So you could,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, set an active would be different than designating somebody outside of the bounds. But, do we have the compact article citation correct?
Yes, you
It seems
do.
like, okay, it seems like you got there.
Yeah,
Okay. And I recognize that there's maybe not a good answer to this, but I sort of posted it.
Well, I think it's a good question. I just asked, you know, where would we draw from? So obviously it's not clear. Teresa's suggestion has some interesting possibility, but I think if we did that, we'd probably want to take some official action. Maybe a thought there would be to take some official action, make it publicly known that the next best selection of the candidates that we were looking at maybe could be set out as an alternate, but I think all of that, short of just going through the appointment process, gets really sticky. But you know, something to talk about. This might be a good time to suggest something else here. And this, I thought, when we get to a point where we might not have an answer yet, is that if we can get through these bylaws, through them enough and agree with enough things, there might be a few items in here that we can just hold in reserve, and then approve the bylaws and those sections that are held in reserve. Maybe we can continue to work on them. Just a thought, but I don't know where else you want to go with that question right now. I think it's a good question because we do have that fifth member, but we probably want to work on that a little more.
How about I make a new section of green questions that we can leave in here for future.
Okay.
Yeah. Always, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, you board okay with that? Can we move on?
Yeah.
All right, down on the blue, the next section highlighted in blue there. I just put a question mark and said discuss. I guess I was a little unclear for a couple reasons. One is it starts off by saying reflects the one-step process. And then you go from page 7 on to page 8. And then so I'm not sure how these are working together yet, or if they were intended to be options.
Mr. Chairman, board members, originally there was a more defined two-step process. The board went a little bit back and forth on which made sense. Whether they should first have a determination that poor performance had occurred, and then second, have a determination that they could do either option 1, which would be recommend that an appointed board member be removed, making that recommendation to the party that appointed them, or number 2, actually just remove the 5th board member. And so these two items here are separated because it was intended to show that there are 2 different pathways forward depending on the type of board member under consideration for performance.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, board members, also, I would like to interject that this track change, red language right here, this is new, it's not in your copy. This is a suggestion that was made by your legal counsel, and it was in there for your consideration. For
Just being nitpicky, if you go to the very first sentence in the blue, you need to take the is that a Yeah, after performance.
that's out. And we could remove this language here now, if you would like, with that explanation, or do we need to do a better explanation in the text?
Whatever. I think I'm fine removing it. I'm just not, given the way you described it, it didn't look like a one-step process anyway, so.
Just a question on the sentence in red, if necessary, the removal process meetings may be closed for privacy. What is if necessary? What does that mean? And who determines if it's necessary? I mean, I don't know, if necessary.
Haley, are you available to answer that?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't come up with the language, but the point is, it would be a board decision, similar to how you have the process to close meetings when there are privacy concerns that arise in an open meeting. This would be very similar. If you have something of a privacy concern that arises when discussing, quite frankly, a very private matter of removing a board member, that's the board's prerogative to determine whether they close that meeting for privacy concerns.
So we could say the removal process meetings can be closed for privacy matters if if determined by the board or if requested, something like that, maybe.
Yeah,
If we're following the closed meeting process, I think we just need to refer to that process, because generally something like that in the process, that the board might determine that in a case like that we can close the meeting and want to, but the individual may choose to say they want it open. So and that's already in the closed meeting process, so we somehow just need to reference that, I think.
yeah, I mean, that would be my direction to go as well, would be just to reference your section that you have for procedure to close meetings, which, right now is section 9.6. So, whether you say pursuant to section 9.6 of the bylaws, so as to refer to that and keep it consistent.
So Clayton, just to make sure I understand, did you want to remove the poor performance paragraph? Or was there?
You're asking if I want to know. I wasn't trying to remove any of it, just trying to understand how this is working together. So we've got poor performance, and so how do we go from the top section in blue there to removal of appointed board member or removal of a fifth board member? So so we're defining basically the issue and then saying based on that we'll remove. I'm just trying to make sure we're clear on how this is supposed to work.
It starts off with any board member may assert that another board member has conducted poor performance or misconduct, thereby initiating a motion for board members to consider whether poor performance or misconduct has occurred.
So the logic flow is how do, basically the question is, how do we remove a board member? So the first paragraph and the third paragraph define how the right that the board has to do that. Perhaps that second paragraph, poor performance, should come last. And then the flow would make more sense. This is how you remove, and this is why we remove, and this is the definition of poor performance. basically.
Last before removal of an appointed board member.
Right.
Right here, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
does that make sense?
so now we've got a little rearrangement here.
And then you have the two-step process depending on the type of board member. And that makes sense too.
Yeah, it seems like these first three paragraphs are basically how do we make a recommendation to remove a board member? And the next two bolded paragraphs are really saying we don't have the proper authority has to remove based on our recommendation. Whereas the fifth board member, that jurisdiction is within the board to do.
Would it help if these titles were rephrased somehow? Or
Do we need a different, an additional section? Like, should there be section 3.6? Process for determination of board member removal, and then section 3.7. Process for removal.
oops. I'm sorry, guys, sometimes this happens.
there's no way I could do what you're doing right now, so it's not an easy job. Right, it's not easy.
Something like that, is that,
Well, I think it should still be process to remove a board member, and then the one up above, process for recommendation of removal.
okay. Thank you.
Because it's almost like two separate bits, isn't it?
Could you read that again to me?
Sure, process for recommendation or removal of a board member.
Maybe this could be determination?
No, I like that recommendation.
Okay,
So while you're right there on the third paragraph, poor performance includes repeated failure to attend mandatory. How about changing it to scheduled instead of mandatory? These meetings, that's kind of.
Or scheduled.
Scheduled.
Or regular, we use the term regular.
Yeah, just-
Also. Yeah.
It goes scheduled.
regular or scheduled? Oh, sorry,
Scheduled.
scheduled?
Yeah, because
I like that better.
Okay,
It's a little less.
what's a mandatory meeting?
all right, and we know I'll have to, well, look at that, since this is at the end of the section, I will actually have to read it.
Yeah.
That's really.
Hey, whoa, page 8.
Look at us go.
May I add one thing? I'm wondering if there could be,
Sorry.
yeah. I'm so concerned about the name for 3.7, that it implies that the board has jurisdiction to remove a board member. Because the board may make that recommendation, but the Crown Council or the governor may decide not to remove, so. But then the board clearly has recommendation to remove this, I just wonder.
How about that?
That's my, yeah, my
Are
concern.
you feeling that?
Good.
All right,
Thank you. Sorry, is that recommending slash removal?
yeah, okay.
Get rid of the slash.
Just yeah, get rid of the slash. There you go.
No, just
No.
get rid of the slash.
Recommending removal of board member.
But you can, all right,
That's good.
let's say bye. Is that what you mean here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what did we call 3.6?
Process for recommendation, you want this to be recommending removal?
Then there 3.6 and 3.7 are the same title.
Right.
Yeah, so just leave it.
Sorry.
I think that's okay.
I
They
think
have the same
3.7 needs some more tweaking. Process. It's too similar. But
I
see your
think
point.
it's too similar.
Before I had tried to say actions for recommending removal of board members. And I don't, you know,
How about, okay, what about we put tribal, state and board actions for removal of board members? So we acknowledge that the tribes and the state and the board can play a role. That the board cannot on its own get rid of state appointed. Right? Isn't that kind of what we're trying to get to here, is the board does not have sweeping authority So it would be tribal, state, and board actions to remove board members. Does that make sense? Tribal, state, board actions to remove members.
What about that?
No, I don't think that, no. Because it might have been a conduct issue.
Yeah, you're right.
But I think the point of 3.7 is to indicate to members and to the public who has the authority to remove.
No, the tribal state word come for the action.
I knocked myself into circle this time.
Right under the number 3.7.
He's sweating.
So the very first word after 3.7 would be tribal hyphen state hyphen board actions to remove board members. Let's see how that looks.
Suggestion? 3.7 is, we're recommending is where we're going to be recommending removal of board member. 3.6, we probably just want to come up with a different title for 3.6 that would simplify it.
Is it grounds for removal? Because we're defining poor performance. Grounds for recommending removal on 3.6.
Yeah. See what that looks like.
Grounds for recommendation for removal of a board member.
Then can the next one just say the same process and go back to process like we had for 3.6?
Like this?
Well, the whole, process, whatever, go back to 3.6. Process for recommendation for removal of the board.
Sorry.
Yes, and you can also scoot closer. You can scoot closer to the screen and,
Like to the-
easier.
Let's to the mouse.
So grounds for recommending removal of a board. Because it's awkward having full recommendation for removal.
Yeah.
So if we just do grounds for recommending removal of a board member.
Okay,
No,
Oh,
take the other.
Recommending.
That's it.
there, that's it.
all right, thank you.
And then maybe on 3.7,
Is recommendation for removal of board member.
recommending removal of a board member. Process for recommending.
No.
Process for recommending removal.
There you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, let's move on.
And,
Good job.
We'll give you a clerical certificate when you're done.
I'm about to change this to, black text. Is that,
Yay.
yeah?
Yeah.
Is that where we're at with that?
I like that.
And here we had a highlighted section. And that requires that the other 4 voting members are present. If somebody's having, you want to keep that it's got to be all 4 other,
Yes,
yep, okay. So that's there. And we're gonna double check this reference, which that can stay. Yeah. And, all right, these sections here these could be black, right? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, yeah, board positions.
All right. I think this one's gonna require some discussion because we certainly do have a board chair and vice chair. We do not yet have a treasurer, but I think what's being suggested here is that we have a treasurer, but I think we need to talk through all three.
But yeah, Mr. Chairman, board members, I did rewrite this section in encouragement of the board selecting a board treasurer. And I think it would be good for the overall intentions of showing transparency of funds management and having some separation of budgeting, authorizations, but I know that not everybody's on the same page here. Perhaps Haley, would you like to chime in any on board treasurer position?
Sure. So, after thinking about it and also having the same concerns as Ethan about just being transparent and accountable, especially when handling funds. John and I talked, and if there is some sort of personnel who is hired to essentially keep the records, do all of that for the board, and then put it on the agenda as an action item for approval from the board, that I think keeps your transparency and your accountability. There's some examples of city councils doing that where they have it as a line item in an agenda, and your expenditures, your reimbursements, what have you, are then approved by the board at that meeting. So you're holding yourselves accountable and you're also being transparent with the funds.
You prefaced your comment with if the staff member is available. At this point, unless Ethan assigns someone or unless we bring on like a business manager, I don't know, Ethan, where are you at with that?
Mr. Chairman, we are still developing the budget and trying to figure out where to best put the staffing resources. So I guess the determination of what is desired here will probably influence the outcome.
So even if a person was assigned to do this, how many hours a week would it take to fulfill that responsibility?
One of the things I'm not as certain about is whether or not we end up contracting that effort and having a unique and separate entity oversee things as opposed to having employees of the board oversee the budget expenditures of the board, because it's not quite as separate set of functions, but kind of like how you've got the legislature that looks over the executive budget, right? They're separate. But I don't know, I'm still kind of working on this. I haven't got it all figured out.
Well, my thought was, I'm really hesitant to make that a board position. Only because, well, one, I don't know how much time it would take, but two, if you're onboarding new board members every 4 years and there's a learning curve to just do the job of the board member, but they're also gonna have to take this on, you lose institutional memory of expenditures and what should this be? And therein lies opportunities for lots of mistakes, potentially. So I do like the idea of having it contracted to an individual in some way, or have it be some person or entity's responsibility, just so those patterns can be tracked over time.
This may help if I just, first of all, it's possible that the language doesn't really reflect what I was thinking. So maybe, because I don't see that the treasurer position would be quite as hard as all that. There's really two primary things that I think that the treasurer would be responsible for. One is the ushering through for authorization board compensation, which is really simply that a treasurer would receive the spreadsheets that I sent you out earlier today from the board members, route them through the vice chair and the chair and then the payroll. That's it, which is, I think, pretty straightforward. The second would be to look at the budget that the Office of the Engineer hands in, similar to how you look at minutes from a meeting. And you, a treasurer, in my opinion, could take that charge really, you could be kind of lightheaded about it or heavy-handed about it, but it would be there as an oversight, just to see what the engineer is doing out of the office and the expenses that are being made, and it's just a check.
Doesn't that information though come to the board on a monthly or quarterly basis for verification anyway? I'm not quite sure what we're trying to get at here. I just have a question about that.
And I guess I read it, right off the bat, it says may, right up in the, right after 4.1, the board may choose. So to me, by having the board treasurer in here, doesn't mean we have to have a board treasurer sign. But in the future, if we do want one, if we do find our financial complexity is warranted, then maybe we do need a board chair in the future, or a treasurer in the future. It's giving us the latitude to have this position. It doesn't say we have to have it now. So by having it in there, it's giving us flexibility into the future.
Placeholder.
Well, I guess I'll throw in my 2 bits. In every board that I've ever been on, there's a chair and a vice chair, and that's pretty much it. Unless you're dealing with some large, like Glacier Bank might have a board treasurer or something like that. And they have 12 board of directors. But for instance, I was just at the solid waste landfill board meeting Tuesday, and we got the annual budget and we reviewed it and we found, some things, and it was a draft naturally. And so sent it back to finalize, but all of that budget is developed by the landfill director, but also with the assistance of the county's administration department, and their finance department. And I think then, as I recall, there was some comment, and I think Melissa, you had some ideas on a system of checks and not checks and balances, but some governmental entity that followed some kind of practices, something like that. Earlier there was some discussion on that,
But then is that what we're trying to address is oversight, or, so we do have oversight to an annual audit, right?
yeah.
We do on a monthly budget, see original budget and where your expenditures are.
Yeah, exactly. And I go back to what Georgia was saying too, that to me, this is either an internal or a contracted process, and somebody just enters it into QuickBooks or something like that. And develop tracks this, you know, I don't see a treasurer being part of this board or an office of this board. Yes.
I wish there wasn't a public meeting because I will share my. So I'm probably the only one at the table that, I had a problem submitting compensation recently since January. Couldn't get a type sheet for a while. And then I scanned and sent back and didn't have a signature and went back again. In the course of doing this, so I wondered for efficiency, why board members aren't compensated just from the meeting role and attendance. And that be automatic, and that it is those other expenses that the board members incur that then need a special compensation for. I mean, I thought, wow, it's so easy if they just took this from the roles, from the attendance, from the board meetings, and just the basic compensation was automatic. You either attended or you didn't. I didn't. So, I just am still not clear about what intended with the treasurer.
Well, the current vision of submitting the compensation requests, I think it started from a platform that was originally used by the state and the tribes well before I was around. So that's the origin of that. Second, as we did learn, there's a lot of there's a lot of variation in what board members are claiming what because of mileage and meals and different attendances
And special work.
and whether or not they want compensation. I mean, that has been compensation is elected so far. Maybe that board changes that. Currently, it was that's not something I even contemplated so far. So.
But if the base compensation could be automated in some way, make it easier on people if you attend, and then other requests for which board members are entitled to be reimbursed for, then maybe those kinds. I don't know.
I tend to lean toward wanting to simplify this, and I guess it's good conversation because it's kind of where I was hoping this would go. Conversation about the role of each of the board officer positions, whether or not we need a treasurer. That's kind of the conversation kind of begins to overlap into a couple other pieces of our issues here, maybe part of the bylaws, and maybe other. One is budgets, another is and that's going to begin to get into the discussion of priorities. And I like the idea of trying to simplify as much as possible the compensation for the board members. Regular meetings and those standard things should be set up as some sort of standard process that's simplified as much as possible. Things beyond that, if you want to define what they are, maybe could be still handled through our administration. And then other things you might want to define as being required to get either officer approval or board approval. I mean, you want to be completely transparent, it's board approval. And then I like the idea of regular, maybe monthly financial reporting to the board, so that we can kind of keep track of that as we go, and that becomes then part of our process to stay transparent. Just continuing to sort of think out loud here. Haley, you've looked at other boards, and I guess part of where I'm leaning is to try as much as possible to separate board policy making versus administration of the board. I think the more I can see what's being asked here, but I also personally at least lean toward trying to separate the board policy functions versus the administration functions. And if we need more staff to help in the administration, then we're going to need to try to do that and try to prioritize that. There are some other things we're going to have to talk about in terms of priorities coming down the pike. I've had recent discussions about our involvement, for example, and the staff's involvement in the state database development. So this is beginning to overlap into a lot of other broader questions, but to bring it back to the board members, and as I mentioned, one of the thoughts I had was, if we can't fully agree, we've got a chair, we've got a vice chair, we're functioning now. Maybe we want to continue to work on the idea of how we proceed with the administration of the board, and I'm hoping that we can do that through staff as much as possible. I know Ethan said something about contract, maybe, but if we're going to spend money, maybe we just want to do it as a staff member. I guess the other thing I'm thinking is we've also got a contract with an accounting firm. I have no idea if it would be appropriate to think about them as helping out with any of these functions, but let me stop rambling there and tell you that when I look at this, those are the things that I'm thinking about.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, board, if you will, I have had extensive discussions with our accounting firm on what they are not comfortable with in terms of the services that they provide. And they are a firm that they can do some basic reporting, but no auditing features. And that anything that they will fund or transfer funds from the board's accounts to board members or employees, they need it to be explicitly authorized in advance. Now we have done some things to hopefully streamline the process. On the screen here, I put up a new spreadsheet it did not so much contemplate Therese's idea of automating this, but it could be used that way. And one of the hard things has always been, getting how the compensation works. And this particular spreadsheet is, it's set up to you can go through, pick what kind of meeting you had, you can put in your date, it'll automatically populate this field, you put your miles in, it automatically changes the compensation miles. You can, if you have miscellaneous expenses, you put those in there, and all of this stuff feeds, across meals. You gotta, this was the last board direction I had on meals, was to use these state rates. Nothing in here is to eliminate you changing things. Put your lodging in here. An individual day pulls into here, and then as you pick another day, You know, it's pretty easy, and all this, you know, just feeds right into this total right here. The hope was to make this easier on board members and understand that once we have set up an approval process and these get approved, they would go directly to payroll, and then these will be, the amount will be directly deposited into board members' accounts. So you're not picking up checks. You're not running to the bank to, you know, because I mean, right off the bat, if you got 12, we're set to do this at a monthly basis right now. That was the last, again, direction that I got from the board. So, you know, if you get 12 checks a year, you're running to the bank 12 times. The hope here was to reduce some of that complexity within, you know, kind of the existing, what I can do with our payroll folks. Again, I rolled this out expecting I get some feedback, you know, maybe make some changes. But this is really intended to make the process easier. That was the hope. And then possibly even take out some of the middle people actions in its entirety. So think about that. That is why I've been asking you to get your paperwork in for direct deposits and so forth. And I will work with everybody to find whatever thing we land on, make sure that it works out. Anyway, I know that we could possibly, I guess, you know, contemplate automating that a step farther, but it will be a little hard for me to keep track of mileage, meals, and everybody's schedules. But you know, we do what we can, and just board's got to tell us what to do, and do our best.
So I like the idea of simplifying it too. However, as I studied these, and I've read this through several times, I've looked at it from the perspective of a board member, and then I tried to read this from the perspective of a staff person in the office of the engineer. And when you get to page 9 through page 11, almost down to 12, you can see where this begins to have some cascading complexity when the staff is telling the board member, you can't get your check, or you may lose, you know what I mean? It puts a burden on the staff that can be a bit onerous. And maybe I'm reading more into this than I should, but if you read it from the perspective of someone on staff having to fulfill this monetary or treasurer responsibility, there's some complexity there. And I'm saying all of this without having a solution. I'm just pointing out the problems as I see them. So it is an extra burden on staff.
Is there also though that the board chair, right, or vice chair provides final authorization for all compensation requests, right? So
There is that, yeah.
yeah, so then if there were an irregularity, my assumption is they would take that irregularity back to the chair and the vice chair, whoever approved that compensation request. Which would then be incumbent on the chair or vice chair to address it, not the staff member. I don't know.
I did promise a little bit to do what I could to channel the vice chair's interview at this meeting, I believe in email. And he did not like the idea that his employees were approving his compensation. So that was something that he had, he wanted to really make sure that whatever was happening, there was not a circumstance, you know, where it had that look to it. I hate to put those words in because it's pretty good as words, but that was my recollection of what he brought up about the compensation to board members issue. I do think that absent a treasurer, people could just send their compensation directly to the chair, and the chair could just send their compensation directly to the vice chair, and the chair and the vice chair could just pass them to payroll, which would signify approval. That is an easy way to make things move.
So in the process you're trying to set up here, Ethan, with that table that you had just presented. So what would, for example, what would I receive and what would I do with it?
Mr. Chairman, you would receive 4 spreadsheets at the end of each month. And then you would review those for whatever level of review you wanted to impose on them. And then as soon as you sent them to payroll, they would be considered authorized, and then that's it.
I would, so as part of that, in terms of either simplifying or continuing to try to keep the administration versus policymaking separate, I get what you're after. For my own sake, I would want to know that there had been some administration eyes on them before I saw them, so that if there was anything that looked out of order, that would be brought to my attention, so that we could take a look at those. I mean, I'm hoping that there would be an administrative step in there that would do that before.
We can do that, Mr. Chairman. So let me just re-navigate the chain of title for compensation requests, if you will. We will send them all first. All board members will send them first to Christie. Hi, Christie. Christie will do that an administrative check, which should be much easier with using this Excel sheet, because all the math is baked into it, and the things that you select are things that you're approved to get compensation for. You still need to keep track of your dates that you did things, and know your mileage, and if you have receipts for hotels, that's you gotta have those. But Christie could compile the 4 compensation requests and send them to you, Mr. Chairman, and she could oversee your own to see, look at it for accuracy, and then usher that through to Vice Chair Pitt or whoever holds those positions in the future. And then the last step would just be you pushing those along to payroll, which would be the authorization step.
And payroll is to,
I'm sorry.
Is that Davis? Okay.
To Marie, our
Marie.
accountant. Yes, sorry.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes sense to me. What does the rest of the board members think? And I think that addresses the, continues to address the question of, we've got a chair and a vice chair. The treasurer might be one of those I think we could hold as reserved. I think I'm not hearing unless I hear a strong vote by the board here, or suggestion by board members that we need to have a treasurer. Maybe that's something we could just hold in reserve, but that's just my thought. So further comments on the board treasurer question?
As I read through it, I wasn't crazy about having a treasurer on the board either. And in the interest of full disclosure, that's just got a lot to do with how much difficulty I have balancing my own books. I don't want anybody to expect me to balance theirs either. But so I was a little reticent about that, but as I read it, as I shared, it's it does put an onerous burden on the staff if we don't address it in another way, and I think this other solution is workable.
The Excel sheet will very much simplify what our office has been doing so far. So we're still at a net reduction of paper. If board members are going to be in agreement with some form of that Excel sheet being the way that you're compensated, it's very similar to how we run payroll for staff. The staff payroll is more complicated, obviously, but anyway, so I have taken the liberty then, I think, to right now remove the treasurer position. I've rephrased this here that the board will choose two of its members to serve in the following roles, and that is a will going to be all right?
Ethan, so board members, do you want it removed or do you want to hold it as a reserve?
Because my recommendation is to remove it, because if we leave it in there, it's gonna be a question mark as to are we ever gonna use it, or what's it for, or why is it in there, or whatever.
I guess we can always revisit and add it if we need to. So there's one thought. Anybody else?
I like removing it and then utilizing the system that Ethan described, which sounded very efficient.
Same.
Okay. Georgia?
I agree.
All right. You're good, Ethan.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, board members, there are a few minor additions that were not here before under the duties of the board chair. And one of them is that the board chair and the vice chair are responsible for maintaining the order and decorum of meetings. I'm not exactly sure where that came from, but it is in blue to have a determination as I think it ties back into some of the decorum rules that were set forth that'll now be in resolution number 2, which is what the board had suggested we do with the decorum rules. But because it was a specific duty of the chair and or the vice chair absent the chair to maintain order and decorum, I think that's why it ended up in here.
Well, from where I sit, I would look to the rest of the board members to suggest what you like there. Given that you're also very disorderly, I'd want you to chime in.
That does include the public.
Public, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I think we started out kind of rowdy today,
Yeah.
like wanting to ditch.
Yeah.
Well,
Indeed, so.
It's kind of hard to hold that decorum when you're on Zoom too, though.
Oh, that's true.
I'm just gonna change the color of that.
Roger has a suggestion.
Oh, excuse
Yep.
me.
Comments, please.
On the one you were just gonna highlight, the board chair provides final authorization for all board.
Oh,
I would insert board member compensation, just member there.
Yes, good.
thank you. That's a good catch. And we got lots of advice not to let the chair approve his own compensation requests, not to let the vice chair approve their own compensation requests. So. And here the board vice chair provides final authorization for compensation requests from the board chair. Okay.
Well, I guess, I just want
All
to
right.
make sure. So if, let's say it's 10 years in the future and someone's new on the board and they're the board chair and the community's rowdy and riled up about something that we don't know and can't foresee. How does a board chair and vice chair control the crowd or keep it under, maintaining decorum? What is the wording exactly?
Sorry.
Well, I don't know, we need to define it, but I guess in my mind, we first of all call for order and try to keep the meeting orderly. Ask them to be orderly, and I suppose if not, we don't have a sergeant at arms, but we could always have someone removed. And I think maybe following sort of the chain of thought, the worst case scenario, we just shut down the meeting and until further notice. But I don't have a specific, other than that, I don't know if we want to define it in writing, but those are my thoughts.
Well, that's helpful. I guess my thought was when I read it, I just want to make sure that doesn't sound punitive. Like, let's say a crowd some 10 years in the future gets rowdy and the board and the vice chair are doing the best they can, but they're still rowdy. That doesn't imply, the way it's written, that there's anything punitive that will happen to the chair or vice chair if they can't maintain order and decorum, right? It's just saying it's their job to do it.
That's the way I read it, but if you want to punish me for not doing it, that's fine too.
No, I don't want it. I feel like whoever assumes that responsibility's got a big job already. I just don't want to add to that unfairly. I guess maybe I'm just reading that sentence incorrectly, but.
Yeah, no, I think it has more to do with the public as was stated, and certainly I don't expect board members to get too rowdy, but certainly always there's an option there to address that as well. We've been going a little over an hour and a half. Would you like a 5-minute break?
Yes, please.
All right. So for the public, everybody will take a 5-minute break. Let's come back in about, let's just say 10 minutes.
I like that 5-minute break.
All right. Thank you.
Record. There you go, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
There you go. Okay, we're back in session. Thank you. Welcome back. I have us at the bottom of page 9 onto the top of page 10. So that language in blue. Any comments or thoughts on that? So where it says committee membership is made by appointments and work groups are made by volunteering, as a practical matter, if we're creating a committee, I would ask for volunteers first anyway. So I see the language and I don't know if that's the way you want it. If that's the way you want it, we can keep it that way. But as a practical matter, I don't think I've ever said thou shalt, but I suppose if nobody wants to volunteer, then we've got the ability to do that.
Didn't we come up with that language because we looked at the definitions for the two? And that's how,
Yes.
okay.
You're right.
Oh, Mr. Chair, legal counsel Haley has got her hand up.
Go for it, Haley.
Sorry, and this can wait after this discussion. I just noticed that the reference to section 3.1 in the sentence right above what we're working on, it should be changed to section 4.1.
Okay, thanks for the catch.
Seems like we're good to go with, this blue language. Okay,
All right. On the article,
Mr. Chairman, board members, this next section, I did make some changes, between the version that you're looking at and the version that you see here, as per the request from legal counsel. I hope I got this, right for you, Haley, but, it is slightly different. All of the meeting groups were the same. It is just now they are all under this, moniker of the following our compensable meeting types and also for additional clarification here in yellow, this is a change that I did get feedback from the state and the tribes. This originally on these other gatherings approved by, it originally said the board. And we did have some meeting discussion about that, where I had hoped that maybe we could change that to the board chair or the vice chair. And I did get an agreement from the state and the tribes that that was an acceptable change. The reason being that someone might need to go to a gathering at times of determination in between regularly scheduled board meetings.
okay, and then as a practical matter, again, I would hope that if there are things that we want board members to attend, or if there are things that board members want to attend, that they would be brought to the board's attention at least, and if not to seek approval, at least awareness. But that's as a practical matter. I don't have any language change there unless the board wants to. So, comments? Okay, section 5.2 in the blue. So as I understand, those are set, and are they documented, or is it documented that way in the compact, or was that some agreement that they were set that way? Or I not challenging them, just trying to understand it.
Mr. Chairman, can we hand things over to the state and the tribes to answer that question?
Sure.
I can try to answer as best I can. So under the compact, it is the state who sets the rate for the state appointees. It is the tribes who set the rate for the tribes appointees. The state and the tribe are supposed to agree on a rate for the fifth member. Because we did not want to have a situation in which either the state or the tribes paid more than each other. What the state and the tribes did at the formation of the board, before they even appointed board members, was to set a rate that both agreed that they would pay their respective appointees. And at that point in time, it was $175 per meeting. And so that's where the $175 came from. It's not something that's set in stone. It's something that we could change, but it would take both the agreement of the state and the tribes to change that rate.
Very good. And do we happen to know, just for comparison, that 175, does it match a state or tribal rate, or is it something arbitrary they agreed to? Do we happen to know?
As far as I know, it is, I don't want to say arbitrary, but it was drawn from rates that at the time, which was like December of 2021, was considered to be a reasonable rate for a board member attendance.
Okay, very good. Other comments from board members on section 5.2? Okay. On to section 5.3, unless there's anything further. If there is, please, we can come back to that. On to section 5.3.
Mr. Chairman, there is a lead-in sentence here that did not exist on your former draft. For some reason, it didn't come up as a track change. This was something recommended by Haley, and that we specify that these compensations are for board-related business. Additionally, this section sets the mileage at the federal IRS rate, and then sets meals and lodging rates at the state rates.
Board comments.
Looks good to me.
Okay.
Clayton, can you see us nod our heads, or do you need us to like verbally respond? I didn't know.
Can I see what?
Can you see when we're nodding our heads, or do you need us to verbally respond when you ask a question?
No, my screen is moving up and down. No, it'd be good if someone there would just say we're good or something. Yeah, that'd be good. Verbal is good.
Mr. Chairman, board members, this section, to the best of my knowledge, has not had the board's attention. It goes into what to do about board compensation if the budgets allotted for board compensation are exceeded. This was a total guess on what the board might want to do.
Would you read that first sentence, not the highlighted, the first sentence, and can you explain that to me?
Individual compensation from the tribes and the state will be tracked in relation to respective submissions, and for half the amount of compensation submissions made by the 5th board member applied to each. That's a bad sentence, Mr. Chairman.
Why are we doing that? Why is that necessary? I just wondered if it's something that we're obligated to do, or is it just something that makes more work? I'm sorry.
Well, I appreciate Tricia's question, so if you can answer that, but I'm also still trying to understand it. I'm just being dense here, and it says, and for half the amount of compensation submissions made by the 5th, but I don't know what that means. I just don't know what it means.
Mr. Chairman, board members, the intent was to specify that the tribes would pay for their 2 appointed members and half of the 5th member, and that the state would pay for their 2 appointed members and half of the 5th member.
That's what should read.
Yeah, and I may have written this, I do not know, but there's a lot of cooks, and we can improve this language. We can either jump in on it now, or
I think you get the gist. I think that what you stated makes it clear. If we could just write it that way, that'd be great.
sure. You guys can talk about this next highlighted section while I try to rewrite this.
Is it a requirement though, Is it a requirement or it's a budget task? Because you only get so much here and so much here, you get two, half and half. I mean, are we required to do this? Does it need to be in the bylaws?
We are required to report our spending and our spending habits, which would include compensation for board members to both the state and the tribes on a quarterly cycle, I believe it is. And that is my understanding off the cuff was that that's part of the funding agreement. Is right, and sorry, I'm looking over my shoulder to get agreement from the state and the tribes. So it is a requirement that we do that. There is also an aspect of this that is internal to our office, which is just what to do about budget under or overages for board compensation. So both, there is a requirement and we do need to decide what we're going to do if the board goes over budget and what we're going to do with money budgeted for board compensation if the board is under budget. So that money, we need to decide what, you know, what we're going to do with the compensation.
Right. The quarterly reporting though isn't referenced in there. I mean, is this a matter of just simply tracking the budgeted amounts for the purposes of fiscal reporting? I mean,
yes, but
isn't that a much easier way to say it? Board
Yes.
member compensation will be
Yes.
tracked on a quarterly basis for fiscal reporting. I don't know. Right.
That's a good question, Ron. That makes sense.
So that leads to, I guess, a budget question in my mind. Is the tribe and the state equally funding?
Yeah.
This, and that's why they want to equally pay. So if the tribal selected board members travel more than the state selected board members, do we? Can it be just one lump sum, and do we need this? Do we need to track it to this detail? We're all board members of some. Understanding we have multiple fundings coming in, but is either the state or the tribe going to be upset if one side travels more than the other side? And so I'm just trying to understand how the budget's coming in and how we are meant to track it. And are we meant to track it equally among the two entities that are, you know, being selected on the board? Or can we just be a board?
How the state and the tribes have approached it in the past is through their annual funding agreements. They just, it's a very bare bones budget with large line items. One is board compensation, I think, for the current year that we're in at 60,000, or correct. And so we agree on what that overall number should be. And then we enter into the funding agreement, and the state and the tribes separately deposit half of that into the board's bank account. And then the board on a quarterly basis provides a financial reporting on what has been spent. And it's just, and the financial reporting doesn't get into like, well, the state appointees were compensated X amount and the tribal appointees were compensated. It's just one line of board compensation.
Do you say something like any shortfall will be equally shared between the participants? I don't know. Or, you know, but I mean, my assumption is the chair and the vice chair would travel more.
Yeah.
You know, I could see the chair and the vice chair traveling more, or, you know, attending more events.
Well, and that comes.
Just a quick comment. First of all, my Zoom completely shut off for a brief moment there, right after the question was asked, and I picked it up about halfway through Melissa's comments. You don't need to repeat everything, but just so you know that happened on this end. So I'm assuming what was talked about was the fact that, yes, the tribe and the state fund this equally. That contributes to the budget, and then we just manage that according to whatever the expenses are that the individuals require. So I don't think we're trying to match expenses over the year, but the budget is matched between the state and the tribe, and individuals are going to do what they have to do. I imagine, for example, people who travel a longer distance to the board meetings will have greater mileage requirements than those of us who do not. So there'll be some differences in expenditures, but the budgets will be equally shared. The other question I think that was Teresa was asking is in the yellow, upon exceedance of fiscal year board member compensation budgets. That whole section there, again, I'm just trying to understand it. In the event of a budget shortfall, unfunded compensation requests will be evenly distributed. I'm not quite sure what that means. Maybe shared, maybe that's what Teresa was after. I'm not sure.
Maybe it's like shared amongst board members. So, I'm not really sure.
Did you write that?
I don't think so.
I got the feeling that there was concern that the board travel budget might get depleted, and then there would be a need to address that somehow. So that whole paragraph or yellow highlighted thing is kind of complicated. And from I guess if we run into a budget short deficit for board travel, then we need to just go back to the respective parties and, tell them we need a larger stipend. It almost sounds like you're penalizing the board members that, for that. So
Would you like to just delete this?
I think so.
Okay. Problem solved?
That reads a lot better.
I think so too.
If I could ask, and maybe it's more of a budget question, and you don't have to feel compelled to answer. But, so it is possible during, startup or during maybe, getting everybody's feet on the ground, initial travel or training requests would be high. It's possible that the board compensation fund would be expanded. Is there no flexibility to move funds within the larger budget to relieve that? Is there some sort of limitation, like no more than 10% may be reallocated to any line items? I mean, do you have those restrictions? Because my assumption would be if you had a budget surplus in other areas of your approved budget, that would be allocated to board compensation.
We certainly could do that. We can move things around like that. If needed, we can also track, since everybody seems to have landed on monthly budgeting, we can also do what a lot of other boards do, which is track the compensation levels, and when you hit thresholds, start cutting back. There are, I think, a few critical budget items that we don't want to dip into, rent, some of our services,
Totally. Yeah.
so we have some hardline things that I'm still trying to parse out.
Yeah.
Hardline and more flexible budgets, and so, yeah, we could buy a little less paper and send some board members, on a conference, or something like that. But cut into some of the things we're committed to, like payroll or.
Right.
And similarly, if there is a board surplus, which so far you're more in the surplus category, where there hasn't been enough compensation requests in to use up all of the board compensation budget. If the board wants a specific thing done with that money, like set it aside for future potential board overages, that could be a thing that was specified either here or later in, budget policies directed to the engineer, a couple of ways to do it. It might make sense to put it in here because this is the spot where all the board compensation is kind of its own unique set aside, right? As opposed to most of the other expenses for the board and the office of the engineer, but anyway.
So if we're looking at this as being primarily a training document for new board members coming on, would it be appropriate then to explain that more in the bylaws, like how to do this or not?
I would think, well, there's a couple, sure, perhaps, but with the budget thing, I think if you leave it silent right here, that things are just gonna go in and out of the general fund.
Okay.
And that would be, unless there's some specification somewhere, that would be the natural way to handle. We'll still track the compensation the way we're supposed to, but it'll kind of dip in and out of the general fund. If, however, the board wants to set money aside for unrealized board compensation expenses for future proofing possible overages in the future, then they could, hold some of that money back. As with any government budget, there's implications. Chairman Matt, are you still with us?
I am just
Sorry.
listening. 5-4, so we deleted the yellow. So is there anything, I've been hearing the conversation. Is there anything additional we need on that section?
Well, I'm still a little confused. So Teresa made a really good point about just allocating funds as needed. But then it seemed like we were kind of coming around to that, is this one pot of money or two pots of money? Is where I'm trying to figure out where we landed on that.
And so we do have a general budget that is provided in the funding agreement that kind of has like this much money for these things.
Yeah.
Right, and so presumably within a certain level of flexibility, we're looking at trying to achieve something similar to that, and I don't think that there's enough specificity in the funding agreement to tell us what happens with overages or underages for specific line items that are in there. But that's the one sideboard that I do know of that does exist, is that in that general funding agreement, it doesn't just come in as like one pool of money, it comes in as certain dollars for certain items and board compensation as well as items.
Generally, we can't deficit spend within a total of a full budget, but generally you do have some flexibility between line items. I just don't know if the flexibility is limited or defined.
The flexibility is not defined. There is no like requirement that if you want to move more than 10%.
Yes,
A line item from one thing to another, you have to go back to the funding agency to get approval. That's not there. And I'm not suggesting that it should be.
No.
But, how the funding agreement has worked the two times that we have done it is just to set a very like minimal number of items in the budget and a dollar amount. We are coming to the point where that budget will expire June 30th. So upon the legislature approving House Bill 2 and the money that DNRC has requested for board funding, we will need to start thinking about what the next funding agreement needs to look like, and to keep in mind that that funding agreement will be for a 2-year period. So if the board, it would be really helpful if the board could work with the Office of the Engineer in coming up with a 2-year budget, and then get that to us so that we could start formulating what that funding agreement looks like starting July 1st.
Ethan, you've been working on a budget. I don't know if you have a draft yet, but I know that we've talked about it, and I thought you had been working on something. Do you, we don't want to get sidetracked here, but I assume that we're working on it.
Mr. Chairman, board members, we are working on it, and in fact, one of the things that you have in front of you is resolution number 1, which grants the engineer access to the board's accounts as a signatory, and that will greatly improve my ability to get the appropriate information and to fully develop that, assuming that the board chooses something along that route of resolution number 1. We haven't had much time to give feedback on that, other than the board did direct me to pull authorization for the engineer access and spending and contracting out of the bylaws, and to put that directly into a resolution. And so that part, that direction you have given, and I have completed that to a certain level. We've added additional fiscal policies we think are important. We are open to board direction on that fairly important fiscal policy vote. There is certainly hope from my end that we could find at least the portions of the authorizations for the engineer at a resting spot for possible approval next week on Thursday. Yeah, maybe it's all, but that's what I'm.
All right. So back to page 11, item section 5.4. Roger, you had indicated you had made a comment, and then I think there was some discussion. Are you still wanting to get some clarification?
Well, I guess to be honest, I still don't know if it's 1 pot or 2 pots.
Okay, let me ask you, when you say they're 1 pot or 2 pots, are you talking about the tribal and state funds?
Yeah.
No, I think the tribe provides half of the budget. The state provides half of the budget. That goes all into the budget as 1 pot of money then at that point. Now, if I think that's correct. But I do know that half of the money we get comes from the state, half of the money we get comes from the tribe.
Right, right.
But we don't budget that as two separate pots of money.
But if board members wanted to, we could.
No.
Yeah, I don't know why we would. That's not the intention.
That's where I'm going with this, is that sentence sounds like that's what it's saying.
This right here just says that that's how the tribes fund the compensation, but
Okay, I guess it doesn't say I guess it doesn't say reimbursement, it just says compensation and reimbursement are the same thing.
You can say the state, the tribes and the state jointly fund the board budget, including board compensation, something like that.
well, we could also just delete the whole section.
I think what Melissa just said was a good way to couch it.
And I like the last sentence because it demonstrates accountability.
Yeah.
That the compensation is tracked on a quarterly basis for budget reporting. That just demonstrates that we're accountable for funds we manage.
I think I'm tracking a little more what Rogers, so the tribe and the state jointly fund the board budget. They don't just fund the compensation, they fund the board's budget. And the budget provides as one line item, you don't have to say that, but one line item out of the board's budget is the compensation for the board.
Do we need a different section then?
No, you could just say the tribes and the state jointly fund the board's budget.
Well, this, yep, so delete this.
Yes.
But the section title is board compensation budget, not board budget,
And so it should just say
board
board
budget.
funding, board budget, period.
And they are small ones.
Sure.
Well, if we're after a describing the board compensation budget, that's internal. That's, I see what Roger is saying, it's the tribe and the state jointly fund. Now that the tribe and the state fund the budget, the overall budget. So if we're trying to define the board compensation here, we can talk about the board compensation as part of the board budget. As for the board, the board budget reporting, something like that.
Just, how about just that? One sentence.
Less is.
Mr. Chairman, Bailiff Hoyt had something to say.
I like that sentence.
If you leave it at that, then I
Parker?
Go for it.
I like the sentence that was.
It's resolved, Mr. Chairman.
I'm hearing a lot of echo, so did I hear someone has a comment?
You did hear that, Mr. Chair, and it's resolved. Let's move on.
Are we good?
Yes.
All right. The section 5.5. So reading back through that, I mean, because of what we did with the treasurer, it seems like that just needs to be rewritten. Clarify the language there without the treasurer option. So if you can do that, I don't think you need to do it on the fly, but if you could do that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, we can do that. I do want to know whether or not we want to have timelines for submissions. It would be helpful for us to have expectations of how long after the end of the month will go by before board members submit their compensation requests.
Okay.
Is enough time?
All right, board members, you have a suggested language here, so what do you wish?
About 10 days. We would propose 10 days.
10 calendar days or working days?
Uh, 10 calendar days is fine.
Okay.
Okay, and then what do we want to do about, after that, does the board want to have some, or are we done, or do you need something else?
Compensation request submitted after 1 week. Do you want that in there?
No,
No,
Take it out.
it feels punitive.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It feels, yeah,
That's a good way to describe it.
yeah, it's punitive.
All right.
Says the person who's been the worst at doing this. I apologize.
I know what to do, for this section, Mr. Chairman, if you'll let me just do this on my own at a later date, or, at a later time, I can.
Yeah.
talk to this. Okay?
Yep. Yep. Let's do it. Sorry, moving on to page 12. Unless there are other comments and other pieces of it, we've got a highlighted section. I'm looking at my notes here. And if you read that, you get to the end there, it says, or removal of board chair or vice chair, the chair or vice chair shall be removed from the account as a signatory. And then my comment says, then what? We probably want to have a then what? If you see what I'm thinking. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something.
I think just for, just general readability, if you put the action at the beginning of the sentence, you don't have to travel to the end to figure out what's going on. So if you reverse that, the chair or vice chair shall be removed from the account as a signatory when, just finish that sentence. At the end of their term or when they're removed, whatever. You take the colon out after you put my glasses on. Is that a colon? No, it's not.
I get it. It
Is it-
says the
So
person.
I got on that first sentence. Bank accounts, it should say bank accounts owned by the board shall be in the name of the Flathead Reservation Water Management Board.
Yes.
Is that? How are you feeling there?
I like that.
It's good.
We good?
Yep.
Yes.
You guys are whipping right along here. So I don't have, unless you have something on page 13, I'm jumping to page 14, so. I want to discuss 8.2. And,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah,
excuse me, I'm back on page 13.
okay,
Just for consideration in regard to conflicts of interest.
go for it.
Yes, I'm used to working with board agendas that at the beginning of the meeting, you know, in the approval of the agenda, after the board members have to disclose whether or not there's any issues of conflict of interest. So people are called out, you know, is there any issue of conflict of interest? Teresa, no. Roger, no. I think having it built into the agenda is sometimes useful. That's my only comment.
If everyone is generally in agreement with that, without taking action, if we can, we can certainly have future agendas reflect that. That sounds good to me. I see Haley has a hand up.
Yeah, since we're back on this section here, I made a comment. I know Ethan, I had quite a bit in my email. But I made a comment to also add language to exclude the conflicted member from participation in the discussion as well as taking action, because they really shouldn't be involved in any of the discussion if they do have a true conflict.
So any conflict situation we can expect, or maybe we need to direct, we can expect a board member to recuse themselves from involvement in that particular issue. Does that help? And I don't know if we put that in the bylaws, but if that's needed.
Maybe I could, it sounds to me like Haley gave me some language I didn't get into this section, so I'll go back and try to fix that and then add in the language about disclosing that no one has any conflicts of interest in each agenda. Right? Yes.
We could just add it to our standard agenda format.
As like in the opening
Yes.
of the meeting, that nobody has any conflicts with anything that's on this agenda, right?
Yes.
Okay, and maybe if you guys are all right, I could work on that section with Haley to get that groomed up, so I don't have to think about beat for all of it. I heard Haley had good words. I'd like to get them in here. Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, do you have anything else in this section?
I do not. I'm on to 8.2. And it's no reflection on Ethan or the position or anything, but my question is why do we want 8.2 in the bylaws, the board bylaws?
Mr. Chairman, board members, at one point you requested this section to be in here. I'm happy to remove this section from your bylaws.
If board members want it in there, I'm fine. I want it for discussion and hear what other board members have to say. That was my personal thought, though.
So would this be more appropriate to have in a personnel policy? Yeah.
And it's also spelled out in the ordinance too, what those duties are.
Yes.
You know, how often we need to repeat that.
I like putting a condensed version of this in the personnel policy. think that's a good spot for it.
Is there any part of this A and B that is not addressed, like in your position description, Ethan?
Not that I'm aware of at this time. I'm. And again, this is directly out of the ordinance. One of the earlier versions had some duties of the engineer in here. Then we wanted to just specifically pull in language from the ordinance of the compact. And then we started pulling pieces about the engineer out of the bylaws. And this is I'm going to call it a holdover from all those. So we'll just get this pulled out of here. And,
Let me just ask a question, and if so, other board members can just chime in here. So we could remove it. The other thought is maybe what we're reaching for, and we don't have to have it in here at all, but maybe what we're reaching for is to define the relationship between the board and the Office of Engineer. And I don't know that we need something there, but if we put anything, that seems to me like that would be more appropriate. Putting the current language in the personnel policy seems most appropriate to me as well. And I don't know what that language on the relationship would be, but that was board thoughts.
I think that the position description would always, if signed by all the parties, would take precedence in terms of describing the authority and responsibility. I was just looking at what it said here, like all decisions of the engineer shall be in writing with a written justification of the decision and shall be served personally by certified mailer and involved, details like that. I don't know if it goes to that level of detail in a position description, but maybe details like that are more related to procedures for the office of the engineer. But I don't believe that having an authority and responsibility section belongs in the board bylaws.
That was my question. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we got four concurrences on that, Clayton.
All right. Sounds good. We can remove it. 8.3. Any comments on the items, and especially in the items in red?
Can I ask a dumb question?
Yes.
I feel that is my role on the board. So we have the commissioner is appointed and acts under the supervision of the water engineer. Serves at the pleasure of the board and can be removed by the board. Do we need to explain the connection between the water engineer and the board? Like, I would assume if Ethan had a water commissioner and they were not doing the job well, there would be some recommendation made to the board for the removal of that person, correct? Do we need to specify that? Because I don't see the connection between the two. Or am I just?
No, it was also one of my thoughts. Should we build in some recommendation component? And if everybody agrees, then we should do that. Yeah.
if I can just point out, it is in the ordinance on what to do in a situation where the water commissioner is any appropriate or agreed by the actions or inactions of the water commissioner. It's 31105 of the ordinance. If you want to include something about that,
That's helpful.
I just want you to know it's spelled out in the ordinance.
I'm just thinking if there was some future date and, you know, some situation, what if the engineer loves the water commissioner and the board doesn't? Then what do we do? Or vice versa? How do we resolve that?
And also, just in case any of the board members are not totally aware, in the rest of the state, water commissioners are appointed by the district court. And this, I think it is important to have it in here because it's a unique arrangement that, and very unique to this board and office of the engineer, is that the water commissioner organization is really put into our office through your authority, and we don't have a model to necessarily go off of, as it is unique and new, this approach. James and Carrie are both at water commissioner training right now, or what were, I think that's over. But they're headed back, that's why they're not here today. Lieutenant.
So are they appointed for a lifetime? Do they have a term of appointment? Do we need to address things like that, how long they're appointed for? We spent more time on removal of board members than the removal of the water commissioner.
Yeah.
But seriously, though, we don't have grounds for removal. I mean, I don't know.
Well, and maybe because I believe there are still a lot of open questions about water commissioners. This topic may fall under one of those, like the chairman had mentioned, where we could kick the can down the road a little bit on the water commissioner issue. I myself did have plans to try to meet with some judges who actively appoint commissioners, so I could better inform the details of how a useful approach might be for water commissioner appointments.
Do we create a section within the bylaws and reserve it for future definition or future action? I don't know.
This part is all true mostly, so we could, I know that we need to come back to it, so I won't need to delve into the bylaws. You know, and maybe you could also leave it general like this, and then we would plan on maybe doing a resolution about water commissioners that provides a more detailed approach. I believe that might need some of the direction that the board had given me on resolutions.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Well, I kind
think-
of come back to what the purpose of the bylaws are for. It's just for the next generation to understand a little bit about what the board does. And really the meat of it's going to be in the compact anyway. So you're going to have to go, they're going to have to read the compact and be familiar with it. And they can get into the details there. So, you know, I guess I don't have a problem leaving with what's there for the most part, just because that's kind of the purpose of the bylaws. There's a couple of little clerical things. I see there was this subset A and subset B, or B, you know, out in the margin there. I think those can be done away with, can't they? See the A and the B in front of each paragraph, Yeah. And above too, or what it was, I saw it above somewhere too. But I guess we did away with the engineer thing, so that doesn't, it's irrelevant. So,
But yeah, and I will delete this.
Yeah.
Eventually.
so anyway, that's, I guess I just think that this can be ferreted out more. It's just for knowledge, general knowledge.
That makes sense. And then that again could become a personnel policy.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
So are you saying you want it reserved, or where do you want to leave it?
Just leave it as it is. I guess we can, between going back to the compact and for reference, the details, and then putting it in the personnel policy or one of those documents with more detail. I guess that's how I would recommend handling it.
The only, as I read it, think about it, water commissioners are going to be employed by the board. They'll be employees, correct?
No. Right.
So how we manage them is going to have to be as we manage other employees under our personnel policies.
Mr. Chair, this is Melissa. If I could speak to the water commissioner issue, they are not employees of the board.
Okay, that was,
Contractors.
what are they? And I'm picking up on that because it says, you know, as I read it, then that if they're employees, we're creating a situation where we're allowing ourselves to unilaterally terminate an employee, apparently without cause. But if they're not employees, what are they, under contract?
Yeah, they're independent contractors. Who are specifically
So-
hired. They are independent when they're appointed by the district judge too. They're not, you know, employees of the state.
So a lot of this, I think saying that we have the authority to appoint and remove water commissioners is probably appropriate. We want to keep it simple then, because it's going to be defined by the contract.
Correct. And there are specific provisions within your enforcement section of the ordinance, which spell out how to, any water user appropriator can bring a petition to basically have a water commissioner removed.
They also have to petition to have one added.
Correct.
And usually you charge the water users the contract fee. You distribute that over all of the water users who are receiving water in the area that you are contracting the water commissioner to manage.
Well, given all of that, what's the purpose of having this section in there then?
That's what I was
That's
wondering
just a,
too.
it's just a question.
It's, to me, I think it's a good question. It's similar to.
Yeah.
It's in here because it's under the board powers. And one of the board powers that is I believe it to be a significant you know, aspect of the board powers is the ability to appoint water commissioners. And, you know, but
Okay.
again, that's just why it's in there, and it doesn't mean it needs to stay in there, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we can keep it. I just want to keep it simple. I mean, if we have the authority to appoint and remove water commissioners pursuant to that's language, that's out of the compact, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and one of the other reasons that it's in here is to keep track of the fact that this is one of those unanimous vote issues. So it does kind of go into the bylaws because the water commissioner actions are voting actions by the board.
Okay.
So I think
All
we
right.
all we all learned something that I didn't know they were independent contractors.
I didn't either.
So what if, the last sentence where it says water commissioners shall serve, or the sentence above that? Water commissioners shall serve, that sentence. What if you say water commissioners are independent contractors and serve,
I like that.
That's
get rid of shall. And then get rid of generally and authority
Yeah.
also. It's kind of better than that.
And you think it's okay if I was to move this here? Does that?
I think that sentence should probably go under after the first sentence in the first paragraph,
Move this to here,
or somewhere.
just get rid of the paragraph split.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, move it right up.
That sentence that you just moved, so move it right after the first sentence in the first paragraph. Yeah,
Here?
Yeah.
Okay. You wanna move this up after that?
yeah.
Yeah, we can keep that in. It's just that, you know, it's just additive. It's not, I mean, it's because the section is authority to appoint and remove water commissioners. That's what the section is supposed to be, not defining what a water commissioner is. But we can keep it.
I think it's much better than.
Oops. All right, how's that? You like that?
Yeah.
And I don't need to really go back to
Everybody's good with it.
this section, or would you like me to reference the section of the ordinance?
No,
Okay.
All right.
Please, we're really cooking. We need to take the comma out if there's one here. Yeah, between out and this comma, the last sentence on that paragraph. Under 8.4, the very last sentence, there's a comma between out and this comma.
Seems straightforward, right? Or good on the ordinance?
well, I think Georgia wanted you to remove that comma.
Oh, I thought I removed the comma.
Was that the one you were talking about? Or?
It was one in.
Is this the other two? Yeah.
No comment. Good catch.
Okay, all right, lots of extra commas. It's a comma-free zone. Okay, are we ready to move on? I didn't go too fast there, did I?
Yeah, no, we're good.
Okay,
I think we're good. And this one, I am really not sure what this was. So
some of the other board bylaws that we plagiarized had this section in there. And I didn't know if the board wanted to have any of these items covered on opening a meeting. Obviously, there's a question mark here because I did not know. Do you want to spell any of this stuff out, or do we just remove this and
I think it's a little superfluous.
what was that?
Roger thinks it's superfluous.
Well, if he can spell superfluous, then I'll agree with him.
I was just proud I could say it once.
I know.
Three times is not gonna happen.
You know, I don't know, what does everybody else think? I lean toward that as well. You don't have to say superfluous, but we can keep it or not keep it.
I think sometimes there is a need to specify an agenda format or what goes on the agenda. You know, this is generally speaking about how you open a meeting and what's on the agenda. If you had it, you could include the reference to review of conflict of interest. Yeah, but if you incorporate that in your agenda, it doesn't also have to be here.
We can
Some-
incorporate it in the agenda. If the board wants to have a formal definition of what an agenda would be, we could also do that in a resolution
Yes.
later on. We don't
Good
need to have it here. We don't need to have it here. There were a couple pieces of that I wouldn't have, I mean, that I not real keen on anyway, but
It's just
Um,
over the top.
We also had this up here to see if we needed to have any additional discussion about appeals or hearings. It's just a question. I don't.
isn't there a section on appeals and hearings?
I appreciate you.
Um,
I love that. I'm not sure that.
Yes.
So I never.
There's a section that talks about it. It's mostly in the context of review and enforcement of board decisions, I believe. We were here at, we have this question for this section as to whether or not there needs to be any additional information about appeals or hearings. And it's just an open question.
I know. I don't see it occur. I got one nitpicky comment, maybe on the wording, just maybe it could say, board meetings are generally held on the second, just to simplify it a little bit. We can get rid of board meetings.
Do we want to commit to that in our bylaw?
Oh, good point.
Because the makeup of a future board, that Thursday may not work for them and. I would delete the whole thing.
And I had the same question on the location. Are we permanently here? Or if we move the office, do we need to amend the bylaw to change the location?
Bylaws get amended or changed, so you can always change it.
Because we always post the date and time and location of the meeting on the website and other things. I would leave that. I don't know. I just see that could, 4 years from now, that could be completely different.
I dumbed it down a lot, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't still be deleted.
Unless it was twice a month or 3 times a month.
Just say generally.
It's after 4 o'clock, Georgia.
I'm getting punchy,
Yeah, we're wanting to, but we're so close.
I know, I want to push on through.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, let's keep on.
So am I deleting this?
I vote for deletion.
I will address the numbering. later.
Mhm.
For the red, it's 9:45.
Okay.
What did you
9.4.
do there?
This is a rewrite that Haley offered. That you don't have on yours, because she didn't like that sentence. Haley, are you with this still?
No, it just read funky. So I just proposed a little bit more streamlined, language, but it's open to revision, so.
So you're suggesting that what's in red at the top, replace what's in black at the bottom?
No, this would just, would look like this.
Okay.
We need to get rid of the word or at the end of the first sentence.
Okay,
It actually, I think a word was deleted after, or it should say meeting time or, date. Yeah.
oh, yeah, I did that, that was me.
Good job.
Do it again. Let's face it.
Let's see, let's try this one more time.
Honestly, Ethan had the toughest job, that is not.
Well, somebody caught the error I just made, so I'm glad that happened. I don't know why that's highlighted.
I think the clerical certificate is in order. She's done very well.
Okay, thank you for that correction or improvement, Haley.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
On that first sentence, and I'm just being a nitpicky English teacher here, but it's always a more powerful statement if you move in qualifiers to the end and not split the main thought from the verb. So a closed executive meeting occurs when the board determines that the need of individual privacy clearly exceeds the merits of public disclosure on the record and before closing.
Ah,
Good.
nice.
Yeah, just move it to the end.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
It must be time to quit. My earphones are dying, so I need to grab another pair. So I'm just gonna step away for a second and I'll be right back with you.
This discussion of active litigation strategy, yeah,
Mhm.
right?
Thank God, that's good.
So you know how when people make a list and they check the list and they get an endorphin from doing that? Are you getting endorphin from like changing the color from red to black?
Just thinking about how close that door is and that door right over there.
He's flying high.
Yeah, changing the color.
It's a good feeling.
Anyway, and so, of course, the thing is to just remember that the board has got to reach a majority vote to carry out a closed executive meeting, and I think you've done that, so, that's mostly why this is in here. And we've got procedure to close a meeting. Yeah. And
We have to wait for Clayton.
if you think any of this is particularly,
I don't think it's big ticket item.
concerning, I think. You know, and none of this is approved, you all have to actually. Will notice this final document. You know, by Monday morning. And that would be the time where everybody's got to really. Be okay with the language.
Really close.
Me trying to. So, this language is, on closing, regular or special meeting. Are you guys already doing this? Are you taking a vote to close the meeting? The motion, you do usually do a motion to close the meeting, right?
Yes,
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, okay,
that's fine.
just double checking to make sure that we're good there.
I'm back. Are we done?
Almost.
Getting real close.
All right. Where are we at? Looks like we're on 9 point.
We're down to 9.13 now. Cut those. There's a couple minor yellow highlighted items that we were okay with, so we concurred on those, and we're here. That's where we're at now.
Okay.
And I do not specifically remember where this language came from, but it came to me. It may have been something
In a vision.
provided, Melissa, or maybe it was. Yeah, it was done.
Well, let's see, is there anybody who knows where it came from? Because I'm looking at my notes on it, and my note says, is this necessary in the bylaws?
Maybe I just copied it directly out of the compact.
Yeah, it looks like it came from the compact.
Okay,
Okay.
I don't see that.
so that's a good question. Do you want a section that clarifies the review and enforcement of board decisions in the board bylaws?
If it's all spelled out in the compact, if you want something in the bylaws, maybe we could just reference the bylaws. I don't know.
I like the compact.
Yeah,
So the Cliff Notes version of these paragraphs would be, if someone doesn't like our decision, this is what they can do.
They would be given this in order to. What if they didn't have enough? To this. I don't.
So this affects this doesn't affect us as much as it affects the people that we make a decision for, right? It's the,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, okay, that's it.
So again, if this is to train us how to do the job of the board, I don't see this as being necessary. This is describing basically the appeals process or the process. If we make a decision somebody doesn't like, what do they do about it? Am I reading this correctly?
Yeah,
Well, and it's not independent of it comes right out of the compact, correct?
It's-
Article 4, I was 6.
Do we inform individuals that the decisions made by the board are effective immediately and that people have a right to appeal? We haven't, do we do that in our communication with people?
How I envision like a board decision that would be like you would in a court or an administrative appeal. The body, the board would issue an order or findings of fact and conclusions of law with an order at the end. You go through your whole process. Part of the order at the end is always, this decision is effective immediately. It is appealable to
Whatever, you put that in your order when you issue this.
Maybe, you could just, take this, cut out. Take all of this and just say,
Well, I was gonna say, why don't we just leave the first paragraph? And then you've got a citation up there, compact, or maybe after the first paragraph, you could just say, see article blah, blah, blah. Or the procedure or something.
That makes sense.
Yeah, keep it simple.
There you go.
All right. You guys are good. You guys are good. 9.15.
As you know, we are, as I've got you all here, I'm gonna quiz you in person. I know the answers from at least two of you. Roger, did you tell me where we're at on if you wanted to have, text, form meeting minutes, if we could instead rely on our meeting recordings instead of, text form meeting minutes, and the context is, brought to my attention, from Swoit that, Fish, Wildlife and Parks and some county commissioners are moving to simple recordings. Haley has looked at this a little bit. I don't know that she's, I'm putting her on the spot. She didn't say she was finalized and looking at it, but you know, it is a substantial amount of time for us to create the minutes and then have them read them at meetings and approve them. The recordings are, this was a pretty good way to record what was happening. We have thought out of the office that we would still take the finalized agendas and insert board decisions and actions just like type, you know, so you're gonna see each of those bulleted items that you normally see in your meeting agendas that you do take action on. We will still record the vote underneath those items. If there was some other substantive board direction offered at a meeting, we would just keep it to the most essentials of activities and leave the context and other items to the meeting recordings, which we have now learned how to add chapters to our meeting recordings, and so which we think makes them more usable to have the chapters track the agendas.
So Ethan, I heard you posing that as a question to someone. Is that?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a general up for discussion, or tell me you think it's a terrible idea and I'll shut up about it.
Well, I guess well, since it was a question, you asking me?
I couldn't remember if you had chimed in on the email. I do recall that Teresa said, yes, explore it and see if it's an option. I do recall, and this is the time you would correct me if I was wrong, Mr. Chairman, that you said, yes, explore the idea. But you wanted me to be firmly confident that they would address our open meeting requirements.
Yes. Yes.
Georgia, did you answer me in the call? Okay, yeah, Georgia was like, okay, check it out. That sounds like a good idea. And so I don't think I heard from you, Roger.
I think a previously indicator stated that there's a couple boards that I'm on now that we use the record as our minutes. And that basically we get a paraphrased summary as part of our packet, you know, that like you said, that includes the decision or something, the major topic or whatever. So, yeah, that's what I've seen done before.
I don't have that much personal experience with a lot of other boards, and minutes they keep. I'm only mostly familiar with the tribal council. And they keep regular formal minutes. Of course, they have a staff person that does them, that's trained in doing them, and they've been doing it for many, many years. So yeah, my question was to make sure that if we start to move in that direction, that we're in compliance with our open meeting laws. And did you say Haley had a input on that, or we're not ready for that?
Haley, we'll let you speak for yourself. Please.
Yeah, so I have taken a look at, and I've gone back on some of the open meetings statutes as well. Specifically, there's a statute, it's 23212 minutes of meetings. You can have a audio recording or a video recording as the official recording of a meeting. You do have to keep some sort of written record as well. You can't just have an audio or video recording and not have some sort of written description as well. My suggestion that I told Ethan in an email, and also is confirmed in this statute section as well, is that if you are going to have the video recording, it does need to be time stamped, so that if somebody were to refer to it in a grievance procedure or such, they would be able to refer to that specific video recording.
Okay. So we can't just rely on the recording, and we will need to have some form of minutes, maybe something like what Roger was referring to, but sounds like some sort of written minutes need to be available as well. And I'm assuming that means they need to be available because of public, the right of the public to be able to access that information.
Correct.
Okay.
So I was doing some research on this. I pulled up the website that I looked at. And so Haley, this is probably like doctors who don't like people to self-diagnose on WebMD. I'm sure attorneys don't like people to look up legal information online. But one of the things that I had read on different sites was that if we have both audio and video, you need to make sure that the format is one you can stick with over time, or if formats update, that you can commit to that updating, and that you need to make sure that everything's legible. So if you're relying on recording as minutes and then it gets inaudible for a portion of it, that can become a tricky bit for whomever is there. If you have the audio and the video, that is helpful. But I read there's like a disclaimer you have to put somewhere that you are using audio and or video to provide an overview of your meetings. I think what Haley just said. So they're getting used more and more. A few people have contested them. I don't know, but it seems like that's the wave of the future, right?
And additionally, you'll notice up there right now, it says who can see this transcript recording on. So we did find a way to record these via Zoom that provides an automated transcript. This will be the first time we really look at it to see how good that automated transcript is, but we would obviously retain that file in our archives of the meeting. I can't promise you that it is an excellent transcript, but it would help theoretically. Obviously, if you have a bad microphone, you're gonna have a bad transcript, but we'll do what we can for the transcript and report back by next Thursday.
I like the idea of it, especially when we're seem to be concerned with limited budgets and being efficient and cost effective. I like the idea that we use recording and some just general summary.
And again, we will still record those votes, and we will have the essential parts of what
Yes.
a meeting minutes would normally provide. And so we're not walking away from any kind of retention of that most essential information.
The only other thing I read, and I'm just stirring the pot a little bit here, because I'm all for it. I love technology. I do. I think this is the way to go. But for those of us who are old enough to have lived through, 8 tracks, cassettes, DVDs, and, now Spotify, if we change these formats, which I anticipate there'll be a new iteration out, right? What I don't understand is, are we incumbent upon always keeping our records accessible into some point in the future under some format? So does that mean we have to go back to like 10 years from now? If we commit to this, does the board have to reformat any information from the past that can no longer be accessed using a more modern system?
I am aware of that having happened at the state of Montana. And where there was information recorded on micro cassettes that then many years later, due to the need for long-term records retention, was then listened to and transcribed. And so I am aware that is something we'd like to avoid down the line, and at least for now, it does seem like an MP3 or an MP4 file format is most likely going to be something we can manage long-term. But, I would have told you CDs were that was it. You're never going to get rid of these.
Well,
It's the best way.
I'll, share your concerns with that changing technology, and we're on the federal side, we're being forced to that anyway. We've gone paperless. We've hired to go paperless. So we're scanning everything, and we will no longer have hard copies. So we're being forced to go that direction regardless. And I think the key thing is being in your current technology, that it is streamlined technology, because the more streamlined technologies are the ones that are compatible going forward. That if you're on one of those kind of fringe platforms that doesn't exist anymore, then you're in trouble. And I think the idea is we need to stay in that mainstream, buying the most streamlined software, rather than maybe some off-budget database that's not compatible with Excel, for example.
Right. Or an app. Don't put your minutes on TikTok, right?
Well, Ethan, question, you said, I thought I heard you say something about, you've got some program, you figure out how to create an automated, transcript, is that correct?
That is correct, and we are creating a transcript of this particular meeting, which I should be able to have for your review later, so we can see how it does.
And that's automated, you're not typing it out.
That is correct, that is automated.
I know you got fast fingers, but I didn't think they were that fast.
No, we
Haley-
do appreciate Christie's work on the meeting minutes, but we would also appreciate having her time to do many of the other things that we've got for her to do, so.
Well, are you suggesting that transcript, automated transcript would take the place of the written version of the minutes?
I am suggesting, that we'll have an agenda that is the new minutes, that is a very baseline piece of information, and then it will be, augmented with the transcript and the video and the audio recordings, and that I will change this small section of the bylaws to, reflect the option to do that. I will not paint this into a corner, and it'll be meeting minutes or, audio recordings, or, we'll have the option if the board wants to change its mind. They won't even have to change the bylaws to do so. But I do want to get it dialed in here in this section of the bylaws.
So when we say meetings are being recorded, I had been under the assumption that we're talking about this Zoom video recordings. So are they Zoom video recordings, or are they just audio recordings, or are they both?
We have Zoom video that also has an audio file, and we can download those into different formats. And now there is also going to be a transcript file. And all of those are the things that we post to the state's website with the help of the state. They're very nice to do that. I believe the tribes have been posting our videos too. We will eventually take all of that on to our own website, which if we have time at Thursday's meeting, I can give you some updates about. But anyway, and we will try to persist with mainstream formats for those things, and we also have been backing those up to our own server files.
Yeah, I don't think we can anticipate what formats are coming. I think we just do the best we can with the best formats we have available today. So Haley, as we think this through and work this, we're just getting started, but we're building a mountain of records already. But you go 2 years, 5 years, and into the future. How long do we need to keep records, and are there some records we need to keep permanently forever?
I'm under the impression, and if somebody has more, more knowledge on this, but because you are a public entity, and a government instrumentality, as we've decided, these records need to be open to the public to inspect, upon request. So I don't see a timeline anywhere in the statutes of record keeping. So that's my understanding of this.
Okay.
Board.
So as a board, and I don't know how other boards do it, but we're going to need to be thinking about the long-term storage of those records, and I'm assuming they can all be electronic, but we need to be able to think about those long-term storage function, and so just to highlight for the board right now, I don't know how much we need to do today, but certainly that's something we've got to keep in mind.
Mr. Chair, the other concern that I read about was when you have digital storage. I just said I love this and I'm for it, and now I'm like arguing with myself. But one of the other aspects of this, I guess we have to consider, is security. And I know we've talked about that, but it is possible for any digital file to get hacked and altered, right? So,
We have a plan in place,
okay,
and we're currently upgrading our tech to have secure features. And we do have plans to have hard drive backups in the catastrophic events. We are a little bit at risk relating to that file cabinet right there. which has a lot of information that is unique and somewhat irreplaceable. But we're working on scanning those things and finding a system to get that, once we get eventually integrated into the DRC water rights database. There's a very sophisticated and orderly process for records, for water right records, not for meeting and decision records, but additionally, we have personnel files that are locked, and so we do have secure methods for that. We're doing all right so far. We have a little bit of risk, but no more than probably most organizations.
Well, I'm just thinking, if there was a critical decision made and the record of it is electronic, with the deep fake technologies, you could easily alter the sound of that decision, right? And I'm speaking, I'm at the very limit of my understanding right now. If I can't take one step further, I'll go right over the edge. But I have students talking to me about this stuff all the time, right? So it's just another consideration. How do we protect that data so it cannot be altered? Because you can imagine with the water rights decision, if the board made a verbal decision, some folks would like to really alter that information, perhaps, right? I'm sure everyone listening is all good. We would never do that. But
Yep.
you never know.
Which all argues for what I think at least all the attorneys I've ever worked with, and I don't know where Haley's at, is that you create paper and you have paper files. So while we like the electronic world, I think some of the things that are the most important things, we're going to have to create paper files.
And so that's what your workaround was, that you would have a paper record with a major decision recorded in writing, but we wouldn't need a full transcript. So that gives us the best of both.
It will be a digital paper record. And, what we do try to do is, in terms of people hacking into the system and trying to recreate things, there are a certain group of people out there that we can't prevent that from happening. But we do have the paper records in the file cabinet there, and typically what everybody does is they scan them and then store them all in Helena at the new storage facility. What if that building is compromised? It was compromised once. It got snow caved the roof in on it. I mean, there's not 100% solved for everything, but we do have some redundancies, and we're doing pretty good.
All right, I'm going to jump in here. So we have, thank you for that. I think we probably had a good discussion. I don't know if we need to do anything more on that piece right now. We have not started talking about 9.15. It is 4:44. Trying to honor everybody's time here. We are very close, but we also have, I think, 1 or 2 resolutions that I think Ethan wanted us to consider. So your choice, should we continue until 5 on the bylaws and then stop, or hit these resolutions, or what would you like to do?
If it's my choice, Mr. Chairman, I think we would skip resolution number 2, which is decorum. We've been doing pretty good on that. And then I would like to know, I kind of think with resolution number 1, you've got it. What you could do perhaps is give me feedback on that, either, right? Has everybody read it? No.
No.
So maybe I'm going to suggest that you get an assignment as you leave here to read that and give me feedback. If you could do it so I could make updates by Monday morning to post it, you could potentially move that on next Thursday, in a fashion that you like, keeping in mind that it is a resolution. that your resolution framework is designed where you can change your resolutions. You can update your resolutions. If you decide you can't live with something that's in the fiscal policy, you know, we can make that change at a later date. You know, they are designed that way.
All right,
Stay on task.
suggestion to accept Ethan's recommendation on how to handle both of those right now. Unless I hear any objections, then we can continue on with the bylaws here for another 15 minutes.
Sounds good.
All right, so we are on 9.15. So I see what's in yellow there is, did you have can you explain that, Ethan?
Mr. Chair, board members, if the board wants to add any reports that will be produced by the board or required by the Office of the Engineer, reports that you want to require here in your bylaws, this is for you to consider doing that. You don't really need to. This is an option. Sometimes bylaws include things that the board's going to report about or provide reports about.
So quarterly financial report then.
Yeah, and we've got, I think that the financials are covered elsewhere. This was more of a, but we could include that right here if needed. Really at the board's discretion. The trick about putting reports in your bylaws means you've got to produce the reports
Or you can do reporting in a resolution.
that also find.
Yeah.
You could just delete this for now, and if you come across something else at a later time, well, we can address that then.
Do I hear heads nodding?
Yep.
All right. Article 10. Article 10, immunity of board members. Do we have immunity?
We have insurance.
This,
Yeah. I don't think that.
is this pending some work here, Ethan, or where are we at with it?
Mr. Chairman, board members, one item here, Haley had suggested that we cite to ordinance section, did I get this right, Haley?
It should be should be 1-2-1-1-1.
Help me out again, you guys, it's a little deaf.
Hit two.
Two, all right, like that? Oh, good deal, thank you. Okay, we've got that correction, much appreciated, Haley. Now, we had a question from Roger Noble. In the event of litigation, blank will represent board members and the engineer. In the event of litigation, blank will fund counsel. And Haley, I did my best to copy and paste what you had discussed in here. If you would like to clarify, this would be a good time.
Yeah, I mean, pretty straightforward. You know, we would represent the board itself as an entity. If there was litigation against the board. However, if there was an individual board member or staff from the OE against the board, that would be a separate attorney for them, since we would be still attorneys for the board. That section reference is actually incorrect. That I must have misplaced that. So that compact references, yeah. That's actually the waiver of immunity for the state and the tribe is that section, so. But we do have a reference to why the state and the tribe would fund the board in the event of litigation because, or if you reference our funding memorandum that was approved by the board previously, there is reference to what the board can use the funds that they receive from the state and the tribe, and that includes in the event of litigation and legal expenses.
So Haley, Ms. Clayton, so it's talking about potential litigation, board litigation. And you're talking about individuals against the board. What if an individual, and I don't know that would happen, acting in their capacity as a member of the board is sued as an individual?
That would probably be fine there, as long as there's not that conflict between the board, which is the legal entity that we represent, and a member of the board against the board.
Okay. So with those questions, Roger, is that, I don't know if that, and those answers your questions, or where does that leave you?
Yeah, this was an early thought when we had some of these first generation bylaws. And I've seen in litigations where they not only file a suit against the board, they name individual board members. And so that's where I was coming from. Yes,
And that was what I was thinking, yeah.
yeah, but I think Haley explained that we would be represented, so, or any board member would be represented.
Correct.
So if we could add some little language to that effect, that would be great.
You'll see that those names change as the new board members come on.
Yeah,
We'll track that name change with the meeting.
yeah.
I'm not sure I heard all that.
I was just saying that when, in my experience, when those litigations happen and they name the individual, and when that individual leaves that capacity, they change the lawsuit tracks with the new name.
Well, that's fascinating. Gee.
So we can add in some language, Ethan, Haley, to meet Roger's question there, and remove some of this red stuff, and then we can move on.
Yep,
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Haley for some language for that section.
Okay. All right, you guys are doing good. You've only got a few minutes left. I got 4:53.
Folks wanted this indemnification bid stricken, ended,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Yep.
Oh, last page.
So we're on to Article 12.
Yes. You need to choose what kind of a vote is needed to change your bylaws and how often.
I like the not less than every 3 years, I think is fine, because I think we can modify our bylaws anytime we want.
Yep.
And I guess it's my personal opinion that we should be modifying the bylaws when every voting member of the board is available, not, that'd be my personal preference, but board members?
I agree. You want the people that made the decisions available to comment on them. I like that.
And what is that then, option 2?
Option 2 is that you have both the quorum and a unanimous vote. It would not mandate all 5 board members be present, but certainly a quorum and a unanimous vote with the quorum.
I would think more than a quorum, we need to have all voting members available, I think.
Oh,
Okay. Really, you want me to commit to that, right? All 5 voting members of the board.
That's my opinion.
An affirmative, unanimous.
Do I see heads nodding?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
All right,
you can be legal one of the balls.
I'm sorry. Okay, yeah.
and then you can drop option 1, yeah.
Look at us go.
There we
All
go.
right, board resolutions. Well, you guys are almost done. You better hurry, you got 3 minutes.
Okay, I had a little nervousness about the bylaws being documented in the table of contents, or the resolutions being there, only because I don't know how many this or future boards will be developing, and then how many updates do you have to do to the table of contents and how often? Is that something normally done, and did that become a big headache?
I thought resolutions were, the bylaws established the authority of the board to enact the resolution. And then the resolutions are kept like in either a calendar year or fiscal year order, but they're not attached back to the bylaws.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
That I like, otherwise that is some kind of updating nightmare for somebody.
Can we call it an addendum to the board's bylaws, or? do
I would not call it an addendum to the board's bylaws, but Melissa should answer that question. It's action taken where the bylaws give you the authority to take the action.
So what if you just delete that whole second sentence?
A resolution is an action of the board.
What resolutions are written down? Certain actions are approved by the board. I think that, yeah.
Yeah. The resolution is documented by date and description and published on the board and all these books.
You want this to just be the board's website? Isn't that kind of consistent with what we had done before?
Yep,
And I would change finish that. The second sentence should be, just start with capital R, resolutions will be documented by date and description. And published on the board's website.
resolutions are gonna be another one of those documents that we need to preserve and protect. Especially if we're keeping them electronically. But we may want to consider having hard copy archives of all of our resolutions.
All right, do you want them to be able to be modified by majority vote? Or as otherwise specified in a specific resolution?
I think they can be modified by majority vote or rescinded, right? I mean, generally, the resolution has a statement that policy or procedure shall remain intact unless modified or rescinded.
If this is in here, you could leave it like generally they're modified by majority vote unless the resolution itself specifies something more is needed. So if you had a resolution that you decided was really important and you wanted all 5 members to show up and unanimously vote on it to change it, you could spec that out in the lead into the resolution. Okay. It doesn't pay you into any kind of wall, but it does allow for, you know, in the unstated fashion, the majority vote can be used to modify a resolution. And I didn't know, does this language work for everybody? I mean, it's not particularly specific to anything, but this sort of helps to describe them. Do you think is that useful?
I think so. I think
Okay.
if a new board member comes on, it gives them some examples.
Mhm.
So I got one, simplifying that second sentence in the second paragraph. Keep saying updated. You just leave updated language and get rid of all of those other updated. Isn't that implied with the enactment date, the description and publication? Well, it's all updated. We need all of those.
Good catch.
How's that?
Yeah,
That, you got it?
cleaner.
Okay.
I got 504. You guys did good. So unless we have more, I think we're good, or we're good to have them produce a final draft of those.
Celebrate.
And get them to us. So we're postponing our work on item 3.2 and 3.3. Number 4, any board updates? Anybody have anything to say?
We've used all our words.
Hearing none, so our next meeting is the 13th at 1. Unless there's any changes to that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye, aye. All right,
Aye.
good job, guys.
Yeah.
Good job. Signing out. You guys have a good night.
Have fun at your conference.
Yep.
Thanks.
All
Bye.
right, guys. All right, take care.
Hope they have a good bank there.